Welcome to the Nativot Shalom Shir. We're going to talk about one very significant thing that happens in this week's Parsha Ki Taytze, and that is the whole issue of Yaakov's dream about the sulam, about the ladder, where he saw a ladder. He's on the way, leaving Eretz Yisrael, going out of Eretz Yisrael, and there's a ladder, and he sees angels going up and coming down. And what does that teach us? So we're going to look at the Nativot Shalom commentary on this. The particular commentary of Nativot Shalom we're using tonight is the part that says, "V'hine Hashem nitzav alav." Behold, Hashem was standing on top of the ladder. As he sees the angels going up and down, there's Hashem on top. So I'm going to preface this with a little story behind one of Davidovich Tehillim. And that's the 63rd Tehillim, Samach Gimel. Davidovich found himself in the desert of Yehuda, our area. And this Tehillim says, Tzoma lecha nafshi, kama lecha besorai. My body is thirsting for you. My flesh is longing for you. Now you would think, in the middle of a hot desert, Tzoma lecha nafshi would mean he's thirsty, wants water. No. Davidovich recognized that he was far from the Makom Kadosh, the holy place where Hashem was. And that's what he was longing for. And that concept, that part of that Tehillim is going to be threaded through this Nativot Shalom. And there's a number of different commentaries on the word Kama lecha nafshi that the Meforshim, Kama lecha besorai, that the Meforshim bring. The Stolen Rebbe, Asher of Stolen, he explained that the word Kama means tremendous longing of great intensity. And the Malbim says you overcome with longing so much that you're concentrating all of your senses on this desire to get closer to God. And the Midrash has an interesting thing. The Midrash Bereshis Rabbah says that Kama in this sentence means mushrooms. Why mushrooms? He says, because mushrooms get no nourishment from the ground or from the water. They get nourishment only from the atmosphere. So Davidovich realized that his nourishment only comes from Hashem, not from anything physical. And those are a couple of just introductory things of that Tehillim that the Nativot Shalom is going to be talking about. So let's look at the Nativot Shalom. And the pasuk says, "Vayachlom," and he dreamt. Yaakov dreamt. Hine sulam matzav artso. There was a ladder going from the ground. Roshu magia shemayim, but the top of the ladder reached heaven. V'hine malachi Hashem olim v'yordim bo. The angels of Hashem were going up and coming down. V'hine Hashem nitzav alav, and Hashem was standing on top. Over Medrash, there's another Medrash he quotes, Rabbi Yossi bar Zimra patach, he says, Tzama lecha nafshi, kama lecha besorai. I'm thirsting, my soul is thirsting for you, my flesh is longing for you, be'eretz tziyah b'oyev b'li mayim, in a land that is dry without water. Of course, we know that mayim refers to Torah. Amar Rabbi Evu, Rabbi Evu says, "Kekamos halalu shehem etzapim l'mayim." It's like somebody who is looking forward to water. Rabbanan Omri, the Rabbanan say, "Kishem shenafshi tzom lecha," just like my soul is thirsty for you. Kein ramach evorim sheyesh bi tzemeim lecha. So too, all 248 of my limbs are longing for you, are thirsting for you. Heichan be'eretz tziyah b'oyev b'li mayim. Where is the land that how do we get away from this land where there is no water? Came b'kodesh chizisicha al kein b'kedushas chizisicha. So just like with something holy, you're visualizing it. So too in holiness, you're visualizing the holiness of it. Liros, to see uzecha zu pamal yishlach, to see God's greatness and his palace, so to speak. Uchavodecha, and his glory. B'nei Hashem nitzav alav, behold, Hashem is standing upon the ladder. Kekamos hatzamayim l'mayim hayordim min hashmayim, just like somebody who is thirsting for water that comes down from heaven. Shakamos nitzmadim begidulin le'etz o evan. They're connected to the growing trees or the stones. V'nira ke'ilu haim devukim yonakim min haaretz. They look like they're connected and coming from the earth. Ach be'emes, but the truth is, shekol yanikosim hu rak min hamatar. The truth is, and this is one of the key points, that all of your nourishment comes only from the rain, hayore min hashmayim, that comes from heaven. Einam nosim einayim lo le'eretz lo l'shum davar acher. You shouldn't lift your eyes to the ground or to any other thing. Elakol simonam hu leyore min hashmayim. But everything you really thirst for, you have to recognize comes from heaven. Mokain, similarly, Tzamalacha nafshi kamalacha basori. This thing, by the way, this is one of the Zemiros on Friday night. Tzama nafshi Elohim le'elchai libi usari yiragenu kol chai. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. The Rabbanim of Harshim, and the Rabbanim explain Kama Miloshin Kamokain, like this is. Shekashem Shenafshi Tzamalacha, just like my soul is thirsting for you, Shenishmosho Yehudi, the soul of a Jew who Chelek Hashem Mimal is a part of Hashem from above. But Tzama Elokus, and is thirsting for God. Kachafilu Besore, that is so much so that even my very flesh, Ramachevore, my 248 limbs, Gamkein and Samlacha are also thirsting for you. I neglected to say at the beginning, Tanhumim to Neta, who lost her brother this past week, and may his neshama have an aliyah, and may our learning be in the zchut of his memory. Ubir divrei hamedrash, and the words of this medrash, v'shaychasu lahamar b'parsha with connection to our parsha. In a mizmor zeh, this particular psalm, this particular tilm, Amro David b'Yosef b'midbar Yehuda. He said it when he's in the wilderness of Yehuda, where we are. Kasher hoy meruchak l'gamrei, He was very far from the place of Kedusha. They didn't have cars or rapid transportation in those days. Even there, he was thirsting. His soul was thirsting for godliness. Not only his soul, but his whole body. Every part of his body. Perush came, and it's explained, I can foresee the holiness. So therefore, when we say we see the holiness, we have to explain what this means. The Hainu, not only do you see holiness, not only do you actually see the holiness, Kasha Yeshuv, the base of Migdash, Malkum HaKedusha, Yechaze Hashem Yisparach. When you return to the base of Migdash, the place of holiness, then you will see Hashem. And that, of course, is what Davidovich was yearning for in this Tehillim, to get closer, to once again connect with Hashem in the base of Mikdash, or the place where the base of Mikdash would be. Shebechol matzav, under every circumstance, u'malkum and place, sheyehudi nimtza, where a Jew is found, afilu beis osko binyanim b'sareim, even when you're dealing with things of the flesh. Im nafshel tzamel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if your soul is really thirsting for God, harigam oz came b'kodesh chizisicha b'kedusha chizisicha. The very thirsting of your soul will allow you to visualize the holiness of God. Shezocha lirot ozcha v'kavodcha. You'll merit to see God's strength and glory. V'nei Hashem nitzav alav, and behold, Hashem is standing above. Hainu b'chol dover, in everything. Ariyesh es chelak hamasa. There is a part of something that's being done. V'yesh es chelak hatzimon, and a part of thirstiness. V'chukua lahechim yuchedes teshukas livod. How does this come into your heart? In other words, all these things, you have to thirst for God with every part of your body. Again, he's saying, even at those times when you seem to be so far removed from holiness, you're thirsting for God. Even then, you're missing the godliness. Through this thirstiness, the fact that you're thirsting for the presence of God, to be closer to God, that enables you to see God, to see His glory. And like the parable that the Midrash brings, those who are looking at and waiting for, they're waiting for the waters that fall from heaven. There are times it looks like the Jew is connected to the earth. That you think you're really receiving your nourishment from the earth. The truth is, you only get nourishment from heaven. Through that longing for Hashem. As we explained in another place, when Bilam was wanting to curse Bnei Israel, instead of a curse, he said, I don't see any wrong, any sin in Yaakov, and nothing bad that Bnei Israel has done. Hashem Elokim imo truas melpo, and God is with them, and the shout of a shofar for a great king. Shu Tamua. He asked this question. He says it sounds strange. Mashayach lo hibidam Yaakov. What does it mean that he didn't see any sin in Yaakov? Amar Chazal, and Chazal tell us, Kol Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vatran V'chulo, that Hashem doesn't overlook even the slightest thing. Hashem keeps track of everything. So how are we saying that there's no sin? Okay, therefore, Abir Bazeh, the explanation of this is Libo V'cheto V'shleimus, that his heart and his sin were together, complete. Vashen Kain, what does that mean? Yehudi afilu kasher hu chote, even if a Jew sins, Hashem alakav imo, God, his God is with him. You know, it's the burglar who's breaking into a house at night, saying a prayer to God, don't let me be caught, and don't let me be discovered. The prayer is never far from, even if he's sinning. Even the time when you give in to your Yetzer Hara, you're not able to withstand the pressures of the Yetzer Hara. You're broken in your heart, internally, you're broken. By realizing that even though you're doing this sin, you're realizing that you are separating yourself so much from God with your sin. But and even at the time of the sin, the Jewish wrongdoer doesn't do away with the connection between him or her and our Father in heaven. This is why Bilam said that. The sin is not perfect. Even at the time of doing the sin, Hashem Elakav imo, God is with you. Shalibo nishbar b'kirbo eichu osu davar kazeh hamachiko me'av Yishalayim. Your heart is breaking. How can you do such a thing that will remove you farther from your Father in heaven? But through Melech Bo and the shouting or the shofar of the king, Shagam b'shas hachet, even at the time of the sin, libo nechal b'kirbo me'rov mariros, you're eating your heart up because of bitterness of what you're doing. You're regretting it. Al chet kazeh, this kind of a sin, hanasa b'nefesh karua. This is where you're doing this sin on it with a torn soul. On that, Bilam said, Lo hibidam b'Yaakov, lo rama b'Yisrael. That's what he said. There's no sin because it's not a complete sin. V'zeh hein basur me'ra b'chinas Yaakov. This is the aspect of turning away from evil, the aspect of Yaakov. V'hein v'asei tov, and the other aspect, the flip side of sur me'ra, turning away from evil, is asei tov, doing good, and that. Bechinat Yisrael. That's the aspect of Yisrael. Yaakov is staying away from evil. Yisrael, his other name, is being able to do good. This whole thing of God being with you is with you at the time of the sin. That's, as it says, your heart is broken on your sin. The Jew is fulfilling a commandment, fulfilling a mitzvah, and his heart is broken in his midst because he's not feeling. He's going through the motions, but not feeling the presence of God. Melech Malchem Lechem Kodesh Baruch Hu. And is this how he fulfills a mitzvah before the King of the world, before God? Are you shaver open kiyum mitzvah? He's broken because of the way he's doing the mitzvah. There's no Indian call him Mizmor Hazeh. This is what this whole psalm is about. Shomer David b'Yosef b'Midbar Yehud. He said it when he was in the wilderness of Yehuda. Shafil b'Yosef rachok b'Gvul HaKedusha. Even though he was so far away from the boundary of holiness in Yerushalayim and the base of Migdash, Somalacha Nafshi, his soul was thirsting. Shenafshel Tzomal Hashem Yisborach was thirsting for God. Ukamalacha B'Sorai, and his flesh was longing. Kikamos Halalu Shahin Matzapim L'Mayim. Just like these kinds of longing, where somebody is literally hoping for water, looking for water. Kach Yehudi Yosef Baruchak B'Gvul HaKedusha, a Jew who's that far from the boundary of holiness, Imafilu Oz Tzamalacha Nafshi, even then we have the Tzamalacha Nafshi, my soul is thirsting. Sheish Lo Tzimon V'Tshukukal Hashem Yisborach. There's a thirst and a desire for Hashem. Afilu B'Sori Kamalach, even my flesh is longing for you. But by having that feeling, you will merit to be able to see holiness. When you're able to see this holiness, then you recognize, as Yaakov did, that things aren't just happening by chance, but everything that's happening is because Hashem is standing on top and directing everything. This is why it says with Yaakov, Vayachalom, he dreamt, Hine Sulam, Mutzav Artsev Gomer. That's what he said, he dreamt about the ladder. Kamoshi Ber and Yada, as we've explained, Sharai Ad Legilui Hanavua, until this prophecy was revealed to Yaakov when he had this dream. Yaakov Kulo Kodesh Kadosh, Yaakov was completely the Holy of Holies. He had nothing, no connection to the material things of this world. Kamosha Perish Chazal, as the Chazal teach us. It says he chanced upon this place. What does that mean? Shekol ha'olam nemad b'fanav kekotel. The world was standing in front of him like a wall. It was like a wall. Hainu, nemad lefanav. It was standing before him. Eich nichnasim li'olam ha'shefel. Eich holchim la'asuke ba'asuke olam kazeh. How do I leave this world of holiness and go into to the other side, a world of that deals only with materiality? The question also asked, Yaakov by Yaakov, how does he go? How does he leave Eretz Yisrael for Chutz La'aretz, for going outside of Israel? That's a question that many people have to ask themselves. How are you doing that? How are you leaving this place where Hashem wants you to have your home, to go outside of Israel? And he's worried. How can I do this? It wasn't only that he was going to marry his wives, but he was also going to remain there for a while. Because of this, the prophecy was revealed to him, prophecy of God was revealed to him in his dream. V'hinei sulam motzav artzav rosh magia shemaima. Shehudi, a Jew, afilu kashu osek binyanim hagashmiyim, even though he works on material things, Shem Bachinas Sula Mutzvarts is like the aspect of the ladder is connected to the ground. Areyu Doma Lakamos Halalu. It's like these things we've been talking about, Matzapim Lamayamin Hashemayim, where you're hoping for water to come out of heaven. Shinitne Kihu Davuk Laora Laretz Larziot. Because that is connected to the land and to the lands, and to materiality. But in truth, even though you may have this connection to materiality and the connection to the land, in truth, everything, the head is always reaching Shemayim, heaven. Teaches all your nourishment only comes from Hashem, from heaven. Even those that are cleaving to the land and crying out, longing for God. This is the thoughts of a person are there. After you miss that a person is there, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. I'm not sure what he just said by that. But the key is the head of this ladder, the head of what you're doing, the head of your avoda in this world. It should be reaching Shemayim. That your soul is longing for, only longing for God. And God is standing upon you. Through this thirst that you have for holiness, you merit to see God's strength and God's glory. That even though, and this is a very important point, even though Yaakov's body was in Chutz La'oretz, Haya be'emes Eretz HaKadosha Yachad im Yitzchak Aviv. He was truthfully, even though his body physically was in Chutz La'oretz, he was really, his head, his neshama was with his father Yitzchak, and everything was connected to holiness. That's what it means. Angels of Hashem are going up and coming down. All of their going up was due to this thirst. Even when they're doing things relating to this world, through the longing and the thirst for God, you go up and up. This is the blessing that says, I will be with you, and I will watch you in all that you do. If a Jew has the thirst and feels God, if you feel God, then you're meriting the rest of the pasuk, that God will be with you and guard you in all that you do. The things that our forefathers do is a sign for their descendants. Yaakov Yosu Hakolel Shel Klal Yisrael. Yaakov was is in the category of uh, the entire entity of all Yisrael. He had two different seasons. The first one was Shoya Be'eretz Hakadosha, the base Yitzchak, that he was in the land of holiness, in the house of Yitzchak. But Kufa Shniya, in the second one, Shoya Be'base Laban, he was in Laban's house, Sheba Isek bin Yone Olmazeh, who dealt only with material things. Who similar Chlalos Yisrael, this is a sign for the generality of Bnei Israel, the Mashiu Banav Asidim Lavor, a sign for what the Jewish nation will ultimately undergo. At first, they're tilling the land. After that, we go to Galus, to redemption. Lahorot shebegolosam kol chayosam mahatzimon, to show that all of their greatness and all of the thirst, Hashem Yisborach, is for God. Yesh hagalos haklalis, so Klal Yisrael, just like there's a general exile for all of Klal Yisrael, kach yesh galos hapra, we each individually have a separate specific exile. We have our own particular Mitzrayim that we have to come out of. As we say in the prayer of Bon Kalamim, we say that before Kiddush on Friday night. That you shall give me more mercy in my exile, Galusi, in my exile, or my heart will be awakened to your service. But Jew doesn't feel the love of God. That in itself is you being left in Galus, in exile. Not to feel the presence of God. That in itself is Galus. So therefore, he had to pass through the tests that Laban gave to him, because there, in the house of Laban, all of the 12 tribes of Israel were established. So that is the revelation of the prophecy of the ladder standing on the ground. The Horos Yaakov, to teach Yaakov, the Doros of Achrov and the generations after him, as Haderach Ba Yishakein Yishkon or Batoch Kolin Yani Olam Hazeh. Very important message. This comes to teach how he can be able to spread light in the darkness of this world. Through being thirsty, unbelievable longing. Also the Tilim Shira Shirim, which some people say Erev Shabbos, just before Kabbalah Shabbos. Kedivrei Rashi, as Rashi says back then also in his introduction, the Piro Shira Shirim, to explain what Shira Shirim is about. Shir Zeh Omeret Knesset Yisrael Hashem Yisborach Begaluso Uvalmanuso. This particular quantity. Uh, I'm sorry, not quantity. This particular song is said to Knesset Yisrael, to Bnei Yisrael. You're seeing this thirst for God in the midst of your exile and widowhood, so to speak. In other words, you're widowed from your land, from the holy part of your land. V'hainu shir hashirim u'kolo tzior lematzav she'ein hasega shel devekus. The whole song of Shir Hashirim is a representation of a time that you don't have devekus. All you have is a desire for God. V'zos omeret. And this is what it says, Knes Yisrael b'galusa v'amanusa kasher nistamu hagiluim v'advekus, when the revelations and the close connection to Hashem, when they're sealed up, Shaz kol b'chinas hadvekus v'ayidei had simon v'adshuka had semlochonapshi. They're sealed up, so all you have left is this thirst, this thirst of God for you. L'chaim. L'kach must be chamedrash. So here the medrash continues. The Parsha Zu shel Sulam matzav artz rosh megillah shemaima as kolin so tzama l'chonapshi kama l'chabasori. The whole aspect of being thirsty. My soul is thirsty. Im kamod halal, if it's like this. Im lashon kamokain, if it's like the language of kamokain. Therefore, shafilu ramach levorim abasar atzom l'cha kamo nefesh. And all of the 248 limbs and your flesh are crying to you, just like your soul, the lame, to teach us. Chakol toloi b'tzimon. Everything is dependent on you being thirsty for your to become closer to God. The ability to foresee God's strength and His glory. Through the glory that is God's. You'll merit to see the revelation of God's strength and glory. This is the prophecy that was given to Yaakov. Even, and this is the key, this kind of sums it up. Even at the time that a Jew is on a level where the ladder is standing on the ground, if your head is in heaven, to thirst for God, you'll be zocha, that God will be standing upon you. So I think what the Davidovich Shalom is saying here is that we have to realize that no matter what the matzav is, that our salvation does not come from the earth, does not come from the Shemayim, does not come from anything except from God. That our nourishment in every situation only comes from God. And that's the message as to how we can deal with living in Chutz La'aretz, for example, or living something less than not even that, living a life of materiality, and understanding that that's not going to separate you from God, that you're still going to have this thirst for God. And that's the key. Thirst for God, you will see God. Thank you for listening. Any questions before I turn the recording off? All right, I'm going to turn the recording off.